All right, we're diving into a really thought-provoking post today. It's called How the Cold War Broke Everything. And the basic idea, it's that the world we're all living in is still running on an old, outdated operating system, one that was built for a fight that ended a long, long time ago.
And this quote right here, this is really the heart of the whole thing. It's a huge claim, right? It sets up this massive puzzle. If the enemy's gone, why are we still using this system built to fight them? What happens when you're living inside a ghost machine?
So yeah, these are the big questions for this explainer. What exactly is this system? And why does the author claim it was all built on a kind of secret premise? And maybe most importantly, how is its slow, grinding collapse affecting our world right now? To really get this, we've got to rewind the clock all the way back to the end of World War II. I mean, the world was an absolute wreck, and the winners were trying to draw up a blueprint for a brand new global order. But here's the thing, the next big conflict was already brewing. This little anecdote about General Patton is pretty wild, right? The source uses it to show that, even as one war was wrapping up, the people in charge were already looking ahead to the next one. The second the fight against Germany was over, all eyes shifted to the Soviet Union. So with that tension simmering, the Allies got together at a place called Bretton Woods. Now, the official story, the one we all learn, is that they created this system, the IMF, the World Bank, to stop another Great Depression. And the key to the whole thing was that every major currency was tied to the US dollar. And the US dollar, well, it was tied to gold.
$36 per ounce. That one number was the absolute bedrock of the entire global economy. For almost 30 years, it was the anchor that held everything steady. Okay, so here's where we get to the big pivot in the argument. The post we're digging into basically says that this whole story about peace and prosperity, well, maybe it was just a cover story. So what was the real game that was being played?
According to the author, this post-war strategy wasn't really new at all. Nope. It was just an American take on a much older British strategy that was known as the Great Game.
And this lays out the parallel the author is drawing perfectly. See, back in the 19th century, Britain's Great Game was all about containing the Russian Empire. The argument here is that after World War II, the US just grabbed the same playbook, swapped the target from the Russian Empire to the Soviet Union, and then scaled the whole thing up to a global level.
So from this point of view, Bretton Woods, the push for free trade, none of it was really about making everyone prosperous. It was all just moves on a giant strategic chessboard designed to box in, contain, and eventually beat the Soviet Union.
So if this whole thing was a new great game, what were the pieces on the board? Well, the source points to a bunch of different policies and institutions that were really just strategic tools for this conflict.
This perspective completely reframes things we take for granted. The welfare state? Suddenly it's a bribe to stop the working class from liking communism too much. Free trade? That's an economic weapon to build a big anti-Soviet team. And those global institutions, like the IMF, they were the muscle, the enforcers for this new world order. And this quote from the source really just hammers the point home. The argument is that these weren't a bunch of separate, random policies. They were all connected, all part of one massive strategic machine built for a single purpose: winning the Cold War by turning the entire non-communist world into one big anti-Soviet alliance.
And for decades, this machine, this system, it actually worked. It held this global alliance together, and it did contain the Soviet Union. But then, a huge crack appeared, and the whole machine started to shake. Everything came to a breaking point in 1971. The source points to this exact year as the moment the fundamental promise of the entire post-war economy was just shattered, kicking off a chain reaction that, we're still dealing with today.
For 27 years, from 1944 all the way to 1971, the dollar was literally as good as gold. But then President Nixon just cut the cord. All at once. Other countries could no longer just show up and trade their dollars for gold. The anchor of the entire global financial system was just gone.
And just look at this chart to see what happened next. It's staggering. The price of gold, which had been locked at $36 an ounce for decades, just exploded. By 1980, it hit $800. This wasn't just a number changing. This was a 5-alarm fire bell signaling that the fundamental rules of the global economy had been completely torched. And that brings us to the final part of this, and really the core of the author's warning. The system starts to crack in 71. The enemy it was built to fight disappears around 1991, but the machine itself, well, it just kept chugging along. And this is the main takeaway. According to the source, we are all living inside the crumbling ruins of the Cold War.
The institutions, the economic ideas, the alliances, all of it was designed for a purpose that just doesn't exist anymore. And as this old machine falls apart, it's causing all kinds of problems it was never built to solve. So the author does not pull any punches with this final conclusion. It's an incredibly blunt statement. But to be clear, the argument isn't that these ideas are worthless, but that the reasons we were given for them were false. From this point of view, things like free trade and global leadership were sold to us as these high-minded, noble ideals. But in reality, the source claims, they were just really effective propaganda slogans to get everyone on board with the Cold War. And now that the war's over, we're stuck with the slogans, but the original purpose is gone.
And this is where it leaves us. The source basically puts the question right to us. Are we just stuck playing by the rules of a game that ended decades ago? Or can we finally admit that the world has changed and start writing a new set of rules for the world we actually live in today? It's a pretty heavy thought to end on.